Hi everybody, so today I'm going to take you through how to make this pig. So I sell this in a kit if anybody's interested in purchasing one, and I call it Oink the pink pig. Anyway, so it comes with a template, so I'll be using the template as I go along. In your kit you will get core wool, you will get pink wool, you get a slightly darker pink for in the nostrils and some black and white for the eyes. So what we do is we start off by making all of our core shapes using our core wool. So I'm going to start with the body. And as if anybody's watched any of my videos before, I always say it's very important to get this as tight as possible when you first start. So because his body shape is quite easy, it's just a fairly big round, I'm going to just wrap this up and just start stabbing. So the stabbing will just keep the wool together whilst we finish rolling it up, like so. There we go. Stabbing action as per usual, in and out in the same direction, using the barbs that are on the end of the needle. We keep moving the item that we're working on. If you stab in the same place all the time, then it's going to go flat. So I'll stab in from other directions, but obviously the needle is going in and out in the same direction. So you can pick your item up or you can lay it down and stab in from a different angle. It's entirely up to you. So we've got quite a way to go because he's quite a big piggy. So now I can add some more. So this is quite well felted. It's still got a bit of give in it, but we're going to wrap some more wool onto here now. Make a bigger circle. There we go. So your core shapes do want to be fairly well felted. They want to be have some sort of density in them, some sort of rigidity, especially legs, because if you're going to be standing something up on 4 legs, then they need to be well felted so that they stand up, because if you don't felt for long enough, then they're just going to fall over when you try to attach the legs. They just won't have enough rigidity in them to stand up. So I'm not really stabbing very hard. I just stab into that top sort of layer, getting the barbs in, just keep turning my item around all the time and just keep building up the shape. You can use your templates if you've bought the kit, but as you can see, I'm quite a long way off the size of that, and this indicates here, this line indicates how long it's to be, so we're quite a way off. So I know that I need to keep adding some more. So we'll wrap some more around, keeping it as tight as possible, always as tight as possible. There we go. Now we're getting somewhere. So there's a lot of stabbing to do on this, so sorry I'm being a bit silent, but just concentrating on the stabbing. You get that nice little crunch sound, as you can hear hopefully as you're pressing it into the wool. And as I'm doing it, I'm just sort of shaping it into a nice circle, a nice round ball shape. So if it wasn't quite in the right shape, you just stab in the area where you want to change the look of it. But mine's already in quite a nice sort of round shape. So I'm going to measure that up against my template. So I think circle wise that's probably about the right sort of size, but lengthwise it could do with being a bit longer. So what I'll do is I'll just take a little bit more wool, and this time instead of wrapping it all the way around the ball, I've just made it into an extra piece that I'm going to place on one side. On, turn it round and then stab from the other way. So now you can see my shape is not so perfect. So what I need to do is just infill in some of those areas where it's gone down a little bit. So I take some of the core wool and I'm just going to infill just there. So I'm just using the green tipped needle. Your kits, if you've bought one from me, will have a green tipped and a blue tipped. So that's a 36 and a 40 needle. So I always use my 36 for making all of my core shapes. So I just need to infill this little bit just here. There we go. So again, I'm not stabbing hard, just getting those barbs in and just giving it a good stab all over. Sculpting my wool as I go along into the shape that I want. So I haven't sped my video up or anything, this is just in real time. So you can see I've created that shape quite quickly. Now I'm happy with that shape and I'm happy with that size. I measure it against here. It's sort of like similar size to that line and to that round. So now I'm going to make my 4 legs. So if we look at the template, the legs are just short and stubby. So what you can do is tear off 4 pieces of wool ready at the same sort of size, and then you roughly know that that's going to be about how much wool you're using for your legs. So I'm rolling this up tight. Now this time I'm rolling into a cylinder because that's the shape of the leg. Stab that to keep it in place. So I don't think I'm going to need all of that wool, so I'm just going to pull a little bit off. And I'll just fold that bit over and stab it in. So one end is going to be flat, the other end we're going to leave loose, and that's because that's the end that we'll use to attach it to our body of the pig, not personally our bodies. Same stabbing motion, keep your fingers out the way because obviously this is smaller, so it's a little bit harder to stab. I'll flip that the other way so I can start working on the end of the leg. When we're making things out of our core wool, they don't have to be absolutely perfect because we are going to be covering them in the coloured wool for the pig or whatever other item we're making. So So we don't have to go along and make sure that it's absolutely perfect, no little holes or whatever showing. That's when we cover it in the pink wool, that's when we want to make it perfect. So we just want to get our basic shape, our density in there, and our flat ends so that the pig can stand up. And then we'll perfect it as we go along. So obviously we're going to need to make 4 legs. So the key is trying to get them all the same size. So that's why I pulled off the 4 bits of wool from the beginning, because I start off with a similar sort of amount of wool. So all of that we're going to leave loose because that's going to be used to attach onto the pig. So I'm just going to have a look at the size of this against my template. So it's sort of stabbed up to about here, which is about the same size as the template, so that fits really well. And if we take the body back for the pig, if I was to put it on underneath, just to give you an idea, that's what we're going to do, short stubby little legs. So now we need to make another one. So I'll take a piece of wool that I pulled off before, and we're going to wrap it up and just do exactly the same. So with the other one I ended up pulling off a little bit of wool because I thought I had too much, so I will probably end up having to do the same on this. I'll just give it a few stabs first just to see what it's looking like. Yeah, I'll probably just pull that bit off there. There we go. Just roll that over the top and stab that in. So you can keep your other one at the side there, so it gives you an idea of how far up that you're stabbing. So if I turn it round so that it's the same way, I'm stabbing up to around about here and leaving all the rest loose. So if I was to give you a tip, I would say it'd be a lot easier if you made your leg smaller than the first one and then added to it, rather than making another one too big and then having to go back and try and correct the first one. So it's a lot easier if you're happy with your first one to make the second one a little bit smaller and then just add little bits to it. I'm just going to pull that bit of matter out. And just concentrate on stabbing the end so it will stand up. You can use your hands as well. Just make that end a bit flatter. Another bit of matter, come on out. There you go. So now let's measure it against our first one. So that looks pretty good, and lengthwise pretty good, just not quite flat. Just flatten that off a bit. I'm just going to do a little bit more stabbing. The other one just looks a little bit longer. So I'm just stabbing in the top bit there now where I want it to be a little bit firmer. I'm not touching down there where I'm quite happy with. So now I will measure again against the other one. Yes, that's better. And if I hold that up there, I'm happy with that because we've still got to cover that in the pink. So then we go on to make another one. So take another piece of wool. Pull that bit of matter out before we get going. And I think again I've got a bit too much wool. Okay, so you can see this one, I haven't rolled it so well. And if you don't roll it so well, it's going to make it harder for you to stab. So I'm just going to stop there and go back and roll it a bit better. take that bit of matter out. So I don't know what the weather's like where you are today, but I can tell you the weather here in East Yorkshire is absolutely awful. It's been chucking it down since first thing this morning. I've had to walk my dogs and my friend's dogs, and I'm now completely soaked and freezing. I am definitely looking forward to some summer days. Just going to measure that. That looks a little bit thicker, so I just need to concentrate on stabbing all over the leg just to make it similar shape to the others. We'll just roll that in our hands, flatten that back off again. And let's have a look. That looks good to me. Step down to there. So that's 3 done. Last one. So I don't think this piece of wool was as big as the others, so I'm just adding a bit to this one. And rolling it up. Roll it a bit more. Take some of that off because it feels like it's quite long. Stab the end. Level up. Happy with that. We'll just measure it against the others. That looks about the same. And just stab a little bit further down. So if at any point you weren't happy with the size of your legs, you can add to them, but you can't take away the wool once it's been stabbed. So that's why I say it's always better to make them a bit smaller and then add to it, rather than trying to take some wool away or then having to redo the ones that you've already made to match a thicker one. Right, so I'm happy with that. So that's my 4 legs. 1, 2, 3, 4 legs. They all look pretty even to me. So we've got our body, we've got our 4 legs. So now we're going to make a couple of ears, but we don't use core wool for the ears. We're just going to make our ears out of the pink wool. So So I can feel a bit of matter in there, so I'm just going to pull that out before I get going. Clean the top of my mat. There we go, so I'm just going to lay that down on the mat and I'm going to start stabbing flat. Obviously I can keep referring to my template. There's roughly the size of the ears just there. So at the moment this is going to be too big, but what I'm going to do is just tease those edges in. Tease those edges in there like so. Then I can start folding all that down on top of it. Your ears need to be nice and thick, but not too thick, but thick enough so that if you hold them up to a piece of light, a bit of light, you can't see any light coming through them. Now we're just going to work on the shape a bit, and I'm going to peel that off and then start stabbing from the other side. And just start working on my shape. Probably a bit thick there, but that's okay, we'll just take our time. I'm going to swap my needles and I'm going to go onto a blue needle for a little while. That's a finer needle, and just help me take the bulk out of there. So if any of you have got hair straighteners or anything like that at home, the straightening irons, you can use those to flatten your flat pieces of work. So like anything, if you're working on ears, I can't think of anything else that we might do flat, but definitely ears. For the purpose of today, I'm not going to get my straightening irons out. Just keep working with my single needle. So now I'm going to pick it up and just lightly stab the edges. And if you've got any multi-tools, you can use multi-tools on something like this. It does help, it does make it a little bit quicker. Refining my shape. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing there. Just picked it up and I'm just dabbing along the edges just to refine my shape a bit. So mine's a little bit wider than this and a little bit rounder, but that's absolutely fine. I know that's going to look okay on the pig. I'm just limited with what I can draw on my templates because I don't have a fancy piece of kit for doing my templates. So we're just going to make the second ear. So we're going to do exactly the same again. And just for quickness, I'm just going to use my multi-stab tool from the beginning. So obviously we want to bear in mind the shape of the first one that we've done. And now we're copying to the shape of our first ear rather than the template. Which I prefer. Just pulled a bit off the bottom there and put it on the top because I could see I was going to have too much there, but as this ear is quite thick, I just wanted to bulk this one up a little bit. So if I place that over the top, I'm not too far out with my shape, so now it's just about refining it and making it look the same and making it the same sort of density. Go back to my green needle for a little while. Don't forget to pick your ear up, turn it over and felt from the other side as well, just so it looks nice and neat from both sides. And then keep offering up your first one so that you can make sure you stay in a similar size. So my first one still feels a lot more rigid than this one that I'm working on at the moment, so I just need to keep stabbing. Shape wise I'm quite happy with, that's okay. It's just the rigidity of it, and that only comes from just keep stabbing. If you do pick your item up like this, just be careful of your fingers. Just short little stabs and keep your fingers out of the way. Right, let's have a look. Okay, so they look fairly even. So I'm happy with those. This one might be a bit longer, but that's okay because we'll just use all of that to attach it onto the body. So next we're going to make the snout. So if I look here, I called it the nose, the snout, whatever we want to call it. So I'm going to roll that up so that's roughly the sort of size. And again, we just need to stab that. So obviously we don't want to stab this too flat because we want it to protrude a little bit from the actual pig body. I'm just going to go back to my blue needle for a few minutes. So you're quite welcome just to keep changing the needles. It depends on the wool you're using as to what sort of needle. Sometimes when you're using the green one you can feel a bit more resistance, like I can with that, and I just think this one goes through it a little bit nicer. Now refine the sides. And we'll just keep going until you get a shape that you're happy with. So it either resembles your template or you hold it up against you with the body of the pig and you're going to be happy with the shape and size of it. Because the template's only there as a guide, it doesn't need to be exact. But obviously the amount of wool that's in any kit that you've bought from me will have enough wool in it to make according to the size on the template. So if you went bigger, then you're probably going to run out of wool. So you can make smaller and that won't be a problem, but try not to go bigger. So just keep stabbing. I'm just going to roll that in my hand. And I'm going to bring the template over. Let's have a little look. So that's not bad. I'm quite happy with that. And then what we need to do is make this little bit that will go underneath. So obviously for that, for the lip, we don't need very much wool at all. So I just take a small bit and then fold it up and we'll start stabbing that. So I'm using my blue needle again this time. And what will happen is, once we've refined that, that will sit underneath and make like a little lip. So I'll just keep stabbing for a bit and just making it look a bit neater. Right, so I'm going to leave mine like that because I will refine it as and when we actually put it on. So I'm happy with my snout. And I can refine that when I put it on and put the nostrils on when I put it on. Yep, happy with that. So snout, lip, 2 ears, body, 4 legs. So now what we want to do is cover these legs in the pink wool. So I've just taken some of the wool, just pull gently. And my tip here is don't try to add too much at a time. So don't pull off a big thick bit like this and then go and wrap it all the way around and think, oh, I'll just stab that on, because you're losing your shape. So you're going to have taken the size and your shape away from your template. So what you need to do is add small amounts and just take your time in adding it. So I've got a small amount there and I'm going to attach it with my blue needle. And I'm just going to, and I'm stabbing at a slight angle, and it's a lot easier to stab at an angle because you don't get so many marks in your work. I'm just working my way around, lightly stabbing that on. And I'll push it over that side and work that side. So I'm trying to work methodically around the leg, keeping the shape and working my needle at an angle. As long as it goes in and out at the same angle, don't put it in at this angle and then try and pull it out straight, because you will bend your needles. So as you can see, this needle's a bit bent, and at worst you will break your needles. I had someone in a workshop the other day, they broke, I think it was either 3 or 4 needles, obviously going way too hard at it and not keeping their needle in the same direction, despite me telling them. Naughty. Right, so I can see a little bit of core wool there. So I'm just going to take a small piece and just add that on. Right, and now we just need to do the end. So I've got some bits that are there, so I've felt them on. Take a small amount. There we go. So I'm only going up to where I've felted for the legs. I'm not touching this bit because that bit is what we're going to use to attach it to the body. So I don't need to cover that in the pink. That will get done as and when we've added it onto the body and we start covering the body and covering in any of our joints. So I can still see a small amount of core wool there. So you just keep going until you've covered the bottom and the leg and you can't see any core wool. Just use that little bit of pink up there rather than pulling it off. So I found that easier with my blue needle. If you was to use your green needle, I think you would find that you get a few more holes in your work, your needle holes. So what you would need to do after you've done it is just roll it in your hands, just to get rid of some of those needle marks. So with it being a bit of a dull day today, even though I've got my light on for working, I think I've covered that, but we can always perfect it as and when we've added it on. So I'm happy with that. So obviously what we need to do is now go and do all the others. But rather than me sort of doing all four, I'm just going to pause the video and then I'll come back and all four will be done. Okay, so I've had a little interlude and now I've come back to finish this off. So I've already attached one ear and two legs, and now I'll show you how to attach the legs and an ear. So this is some of the wool that we left loose at one end of the leg. So I've just sort of separated that out a little bit. Now I'm going to find the spot where this leg wants to go. I might put it on this side. And obviously it needs to be the same height as the others. So I'll pop it there and just use my finger as a bit of a guide and hold it in place using the green needle. I'm just going to stab all that loose wool and push down the leg at the same sort of time. So I'm stabbing all around the edge and stabbing the loose wool in. So as you will notice as well, I've already covered my pig. So when I covered the legs, I went ahead and covered all of the pig too. So you can do the same if you want to. Or you can add your legs and then you can cover your pig. It's entirely up to you. It doesn't particularly matter which way round you do it. So I just keep holding that leg in place and stabbing around the leg. Let's come a little bit too far into the front of the pig, so I'm just going to stab that in a little bit. There we go. So I'll just test that out. So that's going to stand okay. And then we'll do the other leg. So do the same again. I'll just spread that out and find the right area for it to go, which I think is going to be about here. About there. And stab all the way around that loose wool into the leg, into the body. Pushing that down as I'm stabbing it in. And down into the leg and into the body with my green needle. So they look like they're all in line. And my little piggy will stand up. So then what we do is we spend a bit of time taking some of the pink wool and covering over the join. Now I'm going to swap my needle to a blue needle And you'll notice that I only took a very fine piece of wool, and I'm just lightly covering over where we've joined the leg onto the body. Just push my hair up a bit. And the aim is that we're covering over the joins and making sure that we've got no core wool showing from any bit of pink anywhere. So take some more pink. So here we've got quite a bit of core wool, so I'll cover that over and just lightly stab that over. So I'm just going along the top layer very lightly with my blue needle and disguising the joins. Go down into the leg a little bit. And I would spend quite a bit of time doing this, so I'd put them on and then I'd add on the snout and the lip, the other ear, and then I would spend even more time refining the look of my pig. So what I am going to do, because that one is just protruding a little bit, is I'm just going to add some more wool onto here, just to disguise that. So I'm not adding so much on this side where it's already protruding, I'm just adding it onto the other side, just to even it up a bit. So I'll tell you, I've already made this pig once and I've had to dismantle him because I came back to finish this video off last night, set it all up and started videoing. It was going okay, but I didn't keep my eye on it. And I got to the end of putting the pig together, looked at the video and it had stopped working. So we're on a different day now, and as you can see, I've had my nails done, so they're different from the beginning of the video. And I'm having to pull some legs off and pull an ear off, pull the snout off and start again so that I can show you how to put him together. Good job, I only very lightly put everything together. Okay, so that's looking okay. So I've got one ear on. So here's the other ear that I pulled off. And I'll show you how to pop that one on. So I want to level them up. Just swap my needle for a green needle. And I'll stab that there. So I'm using the loose bits of pink. And as I'm adding this on, I'm sort of giving him a little bit of a curve to the ear. So I'm just sort of tweaking it round a little bit. Just gives him a bit more of an interest. Let's have a look from the front. And then we'll take some pink, swap my needles over, and I'll just cover over the joints. There's a bit of matter. We'll take that out. I've got to cover over that join there and along the front. There we go, so that's disguised that nicely, and you can always put a bit along the back of the ear as well. There we go, and it just helps to make sure that it's on nice and secure. dark hair there, so I've just pulled that off. Another one. There we go. So it's starting to take shape now. So I'm quite happy with that. I would spend a lot of time doing this and just going in at an angle with my blue needle and finishing him off nice and neat. There's a bit of a join there that I don't like, so I would just go over that. And when I'm placing these on over the join, it's just very small pieces, very thin, very small, and I'm just lightly going into that top layer. If I was to stab too hard, I would just get hard lines all over, so I'm just stabbing very lightly. Okay, so now we need to put his snout on. So here's the snout that I made earlier and I've already pulled off to put back on again. So I've already done his nostrils. I've just got some of the darker wool and just place little bits on and put his nostrils on. So I'm going to work out where I want that to be. I'm just going to swap my needles, so always join with a green needle. I'm just stabbing all the way around the outside whilst holding it in place with my thumb. There we go, and then stab around the bottom. And then we'll take some wool, swap my needles, and just go over the joins. So I tend to go over my joins as I go along. You can attach everything and then go over your joins and fill in any little spots that you're not happy with. There's no hard and fast rule on the right or the wrong way to do it. It's just personal preference. So as I'm putting the lip on underneath, I'm not going to bother to disguise that bit. So here's the lip that we made earlier. Pop that on underneath, take my green needle and just use the loose bits of wool and attach that on. So if you prefer your pig without the bottom lip on, you don't actually have to put it on. Again, this is a personal preference thing. I quite like it, but if you don't, then that's absolutely fine. So I'm just going to define those nostrils a bit more. So I'm just stabbing over where I've put the darker wool. And I've kind of put them in a little bit of a backward C. I'm happy with that. You can, if you want, take a little bit of the darker pink and place it in between the two. Again, personal preference, so you don't have to. And then just play around with the look of the lip until you're happy with it. Swap my needles over and take some bits of wool and just disguise the joins on that too. I actually prefer it if the lip goes up a bit, so I'll just stab that back up. And just check out the other side. Whilst I'm here, I can see some core wool there that needs covering, so I'm just going to do that. And I don't like that join. I can see a bit of core wool on there, so I'm just going to sort that out whilst I've spotted it. Okay, so beginning to take shape a bit. Not happy with this bit just here, so I'm just going to stab that in a little bit because it's protruding more than the other side. So you can correct your own work by doing this, just keep stabbing over that area. I think the leg just came a bit too far forward and I just don't like it so much. There, that looks a bit better. Okay, so now it's time to add some eyes, so keep tweaking those ears back into place. Okay, so we take a little bit of white and we're going to roll that in our finger and thumb and make a ball. So I would fill the top of the snout before I put my eyes on, so you know, as in do your joins, and then make another ball that's a similar sort of size. If you roll them in your fingers at the same time, you can kind of judge whether or not they are the same, sorry, at the same time you can judge whether or not they are the same size. So I think they roughly are. So I'm going to take my green needle and I'm going to place one eye just lightly just there, so I can just test to make sure I've got them in the right place. And I think the other one would go round about there. Let's push that snout over a bit. That's a bit better. Yes, I'm happy with them there. So when I'm happy with them, I can stab all the way around the outside. And I'm using my green needle. And I'll go all the way around the outside of both eyes. And I'm just going around the outside because then that leaves that middle bit protruding a bit, which is what I like. And then we'll take some black and we're going to make two little black spots. Same way we made the white ones, but just smaller. That eye looks a bit bigger, so I'll just poke that a few more times. Okay, into the centre of the white, prod it in a few times, don't bring the needle out very often. And the same on the other one, to the centre, just prod. Just fine tune those a bit. There you go, you look cute. So it's coming together nicely now. So now we just need the tail. So here's one I made earlier that I pulled off. So I will reuse this And basically we just make a long sausage out of the pink wool. So I took some wool, I laid it out using the green needle, stabbed it a few times flat. I don't think that's going to be thick enough, so I'm just going to add a bit more to that. Pull that up and then I can start rolling it. And then we just spend some time stabbing and rolling. And then periodically you can lift it up and roll it in your hands. You're leaving one end loose and you're going to make the other end a nice neat end. And then you just keep going, but you want to keep going until it gets sort of more solid. So I'm just going to change over to the blue needle now. So this end I would make nice and neat. That end I'm going to leave fluffy. Keep lifting it up, turning it over and stabbing. So rather than keep on with that one, I'll just go back to use this one that I made earlier. Okay, so I'll pull some of that off. So we're going to decide where we want to pop it, which I think will be about here. And I'm going to take my green needle and using the loose wool, I'm going to stab that on. And then we're going to form this into a little curl, like so. And you're going to stab around the edges of the curl. Just to keep that in place. And then with everything else you can go, like we've done previous, you can go along and just disguise all your joins. So I can see bits of core wool still showing through. So I would spend a bit of time on just adding some wool using my blue needle and just finishing him off. So I'm literally just going in with the tip, going in with the needle at a slight angle. I can still see a bit of core wool there. So spend quite a bit of time on just going over your piggy, making sure that you've got it covered well, that you've got your joins covered well, that you're happy that you haven't got any bits that look a bit irregular. Tweak his ears into the shape that you want, and I'm quite happy with that. You can go up on my shelf. Get you, matey. We'll put you on the shelf in my workroom. Can you see when I've added that, it's made like a little line, and I don't like that. So I'm just going to disguise what I've added. That looks better. Now, depending on how neat you want to be, there's a couple of things that you could do. You could take a pair of scissors and just lightly trim any fluffy bits, like so. If you've got any of those electrical sweater debobblers, you could go over your item with one of those. Now, I personally don't mind a little bit of fluff on mine because I like to see that I've made it out of wool. I think I've said before as well, perfection's boring. None of us are perfect, so I think it's quite nice to have a little bit of fluff. There we go, matey. I'm happy with you. Another Oink to my collection. There you go. So don't forget, you've got your template. Hopefully that will help you along the way. And the bit about the tail is on this side here. That gives you a guide of how long to make the tail. Now, if you do have any pastels, you can actually give Piggy some coloured cheeks if you want to. I'll just leave this one, I think. Quite like him the way he is. So, happy felting, and I'll see you again for another make. Bye for now.